Okay. So again, thank you everybody for attending How I Raised My GPA. This is the first time that we've held this session since the lockdown, and unfortunately it is just a Zoom session because that seems to be what people wanted. So I did want to start, even though we are all in our own spaces. There might be the odd person who's on campus, but the workshop is offered through SFU. So I did want to acknowledge that at least the Burnaby campus of SFU, where I'm based, is on Coast Salish lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Cutsey, and Coquitlam peoples. The other campuses of SFU are also on unceded and ancestral Coast Salish land. Personally, I'm sitting here in my condo in New Westminster, and that is the land of the Halkomelem speaking peoples. So the way this is going to start is we have 3 panelists who are all unmuted, and we'll get each of the 3 panelists to speak in turn and just, tell their story about what was affecting their GPA, how they raised their GPA, just kind of the short version of their story. And Shayna is going to go first, and unfortunately she's got to leave right after. But then Noah and TJ will tell their stories as well. And then you will get a chance to ask any questions that you might want to ask. If you would prefer to ask a question anonymously, you can private message me in the chat with the question, and I can just read it for you without identifying you. And I don't think that this is going to go anywhere near the 2 hours that it's scheduled for. I'm thinking, probably about an hour. We'll see how long people want it. I'm a learning services coordinator. This is supposed to be a peer-to-peer session. So mainly what I want is for you to hear from your peers. But at the end, if there's, demand for it, I may do a small presentation. Okay. So let's go to our first speaker, Shayna, and you feel free, introduce yourself. And I think, you wanted to share something, didn't you, on the screen? So I'll just make sure.
I actually, no, I can't. I didn't have enough time to complete it with my circumstances, but I will be obviously talking. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So somebody else is just coming in, and I will turn the floor over to you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing really, really good today and keeping warm. Snowing in the morning, so hope you're keeping warm. I'm going to start off with an introduction just about me, my journey at the beginning of SFU, and then where I am until now. Sorry, can you hear that? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I have a family emergency kind of happening right now, so I kind of have to be on the loop. But just feel free to ignore that. It's just a little bit of dings. So yeah, just where I'm at today, and then some tips and tricks that help me better my GPA. I'm not sure if I can mute this because that is very annoying. Sorry, guys. Okay, that's better. And I hope this gives you some insight into building a better GPA at SFU. So my name is Shayna Feldman. I'm a 4th year student in the social sciences and arts faculty here at SFU. I'm majoring in history, and then I'm minoring in social justice and education, in hopes to becoming an elementary school teacher eventually. Just a little background, but I've worked as a lifeguard for over 7 years now. And that experience has led me to become more interested in the education field and the type of education we are teaching our future children. So I grew up in Maple Ridge, and I went to Thomas Haney Secondary School, which is a self-directed school, meaning that, it's not that old-fashioned type of direction where, you're going to your classes every single day. It's kind of spread out, kind of like, university, right? So it's a self-discipline model and approach from starting from grade 10 to 12. So, the model was not for everybody, but it's to guide you towards an easier path for your post-secondary career. and, to hopes that you'd be successful in university. Unfortunately for me, that was not really my case. So after graduating, Thomas Haney, there are definitely some cons for that. The biggest thing for me was procrastination, leaving the school, which would then lead me into that path starting at SFU. Like I could get away with procrastinating in high school, and then going to SFU. That was one of my things that I took from that, which is not great. So when I started SFU in fall of 2018, I wanted to major in political science. And, I was excited about my journey to start. I took 3 courses in the beginning. And when I got into the thick of it, it began to pile up on me. And I started to have major anxiety, stress, which then led to procrastination and, built up late assignments that I eventually just never would complete because the very thought of me even looking and opening Canvas gave me an anxiety attack. Like I couldn't even look at the Canvas page. That's how withdrawn, I guess you could say I was. So let alone even looking and completing the assignments if I can't even go on Canvas, right? So I ended up receiving, I think, a C- and then 2 Cs at the beginning of my SFU career. So again, didn't really start off strong. And, I was not very happy. I was getting A's and B's in high school, and this really did devastate me, but I thought it would get better. And then I continued on that path of procrastination into the spring semester. And I had this, sort of closed mindset, I guess you could say, oh, like, okay, like I got bad, but let's just move on, let's not just don't worry about it. It'll get better. But it didn't get better. I didn't fix the problem, right? My procrastination was still going on. So, once again, I was stressed, procrastinating, having these mental breakdowns almost every other day. This made me not want to reach out for help. And I continued down the cycle of late and missing assignments and, even missing a final exam, I think 2 at one point. It was not very good. And, my lack of sleep and even eating completely diminished. So this is when I got into the Back on Track program at SFU. And it completely did a 360 switch in my mindset and the outcomes that I wanted to achieve as a successful SFU student. I started to ask myself questions when I was in BOT. What was I doing wrong? Why was I becoming so stressed with even just the thought of the Canvas page? I was asking myself these questions. And I knew something needed to change for myself, my habits, and to ask myself these important questions. So through BOT, I was able to learn, so much valuable information about study habits, mindsets, and just other topics to help me in my journey at SFU. And, it paved a path for me towards my own GPA taking a leap. But Back on Track was really about myself, my goals. What did you want to achieve? Proper study habits that I could better for my GPA. And it gave me a sense of actually like a relief almost, because I had been in school for so many years in high school and then all of a sudden jumping to SFU. So it gave me a sense of okay, let's just take a second and focus on what you need to prioritize for yourself. And it changed my perspective entirely for the good. And it was a much needed program for me at the time. I was really, really struggling. And I think, in high school, we are really rushed to know what we want to do. And, there's so much stress at that, I feel like at that age. And I needed that program to just kind of take me back to that level. And it opened my eyes to techniques that I could then use after BOT. So my old cycles of procrastination would not return. So then following BOT, I was truly inspired to change these habits and, gain those A's and B marks. And reflecting from BOT, I made a list of things that I learned from BOT and that eventually helped me to gain that better GPA, which made me a much happier and healthier student in the process. So I just wanted to talk quickly about my 5 big strategies, and then we can obviously move on to the next person because I talk a lot. So yeah, I'm not perfect, and not everyone has really, really good days and everyone has really bad days. And, but I think we should all be doing it in moderation. I get a little bit tired. Some people get lazy, it's just, we're human and that's totally okay. But then these strategies will help towards bettering that. And then, bettering your GPA. As I mentioned earlier, I initially came to SFU wanting a political science degree. But I found, I would skip, I would miss these tutorials and I just wouldn't be in, and that I wouldn't even look at the Canvas page for due dates and exams. Like I wouldn't even look at this. So this means that, you need to really like what you're studying. I think that is such an important tool. Just, because I like political science in high school doesn't mean that it translates well for me in university. So, learning more about the subject, I didn't like it. And I don't think you will be successful if you do not have a passion for what you are learning. So if you have that interest, you can contribute to these class discussions and you can start going from there, right? And this is what works for me, and maybe not everyone, but these are just suggestions. So the second one for me would be, surround yourself in a good environment, with good people to help motivate you. At the time that I wasn't doing well, I was actually surrounding myself with people who were not the most, healthiest for me, I guess you could say. They would be skipping classes and encouraging me to do so at the same time. Instead of studying and doing homework, they would be watching movies in the corner and then asking you to go to the mall because, it's close to Metrotown and, avoiding anything than homework. Do it another day, Shayna. You have lots of time. So I found that by interacting with these types of, behaviors, they were not motivating me at all. And then after I started to go to the SFU library, for quiet study sessions with people who, felt motivated so I could do my homework. And that's what I started doing after. That really started to help boost my GPA, right? Because I'd be going to places that would really make me feel, okay, like I'm seeing people like pull out their laptops and, it's very small things, but it really does mentally switch very, very quickly. Yeah, it was a huge step for me, at least. And then the third thing would be a good sleep equals happy Shayna. So I think, before back on track and before really switching this mindset, I was going to sleep every night, just super late, procrastinating, rushing the night before assignments were due, staying up till 1:30, pulling an all-nighter sometimes. Like that is for me, I really tried to, I was staying up very, very late. And, now I go to bed at 9 to 9:30 and waking up earlier is not even a big deal for me anymore because I've had plenty of sleep. And then you learn better, I think too, you're more retentive when you're learning. And, it motivates you to finish your homework and assignments and tests throughout the day instead of taking, even like naps throughout the day when you should be doing homework because you're so tired, right? So it all kind of coincides together, sleep. And it's amazing the difference of what a few hours of sleep can really do for your mind and your body. Two more, make consistent scheduling. When I started SFU, my schedule on a week-to-week basis was all over the place. I wouldn't even be writing anything down. I would just be kind of like floating through my weeks. So I'll show you. I have like to-do lists. It's kind of faded, but I write like to-do lists and then I have like, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's like highlighted assignments that's due the week. So just making consistent scheduling, I think is super, super important. And it just makes you to become just that much more of an organized student. And, it doesn't have to be all at once. Doesn't have to be right away, but just start incorporating this, maybe and see what works for you. And even just doing it by hand, whatever works, like by hand, or you can even electronically type it on your computer. If that's the type of person, that's how you learn, then that's how you can do it too. The last thing for me is, having those mental health checks with yourself. Take breaks and do the things that you like to do. Again, I was very overwhelmed with school in the beginning, and, you know, taking these really big courses at the very start of my university career and overworking myself to the point of breakdowns. You know, make sure you're taking those much needed breaks in between studying and doing hobbies and the things that you like doing. It's just important for your mental health and your overall physical health as well. And, you know, ask yourself, is this work overwhelming me? And if so, then you can stop and take that break. And that's really what helped me. So that's me.
Oh, thank you so much, Shayna. Um, if anyone has any questions specific to Shayna, you can always send it to me. I will put my email address in the chat, and then I can pass the questions on to Shayna. Thank you. I think you started us off with some very important themes around the connection between having goals, being motivated, being physically and mentally healthy, and you know, and just having the motivation to be organized and to keep doing what you need to do to succeed in school. A lot to think about, and I would bet that these themes will come up more than once. So yeah, so all the best with everything, and I'll get in touch with you probably tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Okay, so the next speaker is going to be TJ. And TJ is a mechatronics student, so a big shift from social sciences.
Okay, sure. I'll just I guess I'll share my screen because I made sort of like my contact info's on here if anyone wanted to connect with me as well too. Just so that we're not staring up, you know, my forehead the whole presentation long here. Okay, I think it should be presenting. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just speak about the same sort of stuff, just some background info, a little bit about me. And then I guess like, yeah, my journey to raising my GPA, and then some strategies that I use as well too. So yeah, I'm in the Faculty of Applied Sciences. I'm going into my 4th year of mechatronic systems engineering, and I'm pursuing a future in becoming an engineering consultant. So if you can tell from my background, I'm actually in the office right now, and yeah, I'm on my 2nd internship now with Wood. I finished my first internship with Smith & Anderson, which was another consulting engineering firm. So I did buildings previously, but here I'm working with mining and minerals, so a little bit different. But yeah, I sort of had, I guess, the same kind of start as Shayna did. I started off in a different major, actually. I was in BPK, that's biomedical physiology. And I guess when I started, I sort of compared the experience to high school. I was like, well, you know, you could take how many courses you wanted in high school and it would be just fine. So I did the same thing as well too in university. And I started off, yeah, my first semester, the fall of 2017 with 4 courses and 3 labs. So I went in with this mindset that, yeah, it would be totally fine. But then I quickly realized that, okay, yeah, this is way too much, because like university courses are a lot denser, and they're a lot more, I guess, knowledge packed, and there's a lot of stuff going on compared to high school classes. And then also, like, yeah, I had sort of the same kind of issue as well too. I felt like um, I could just study at home. It'd be totally fine, and I wasn't really going to class. And I lived kind of far from campus at the time. I was living off campus, which required me to take 2 bus rides, and the shortest route would be like 45 minutes or an hour. So then I never really felt like going because it would take so long. So yeah, after that first semester, I just like wasn't going to class, didn't really want to do the labs either too, because a lot of the labs were optional as well. So then I was like, well, if it's optional, I'm not going to attend. Um, so I guess just that, just those habits started building up over and over again. And after my first semester, yeah, I did terrible. I was put on academic probation after the first semester. And I realized from there, just after that sem, I didn't want to do BPK anymore. So I started taking engineering courses instead. And I repeated the exact same thing, taking 4 courses, but they were also really heavy courses. It was like, I think I took 2 different physics courses, calculus and applied linear algebra. So yeah, that was mayhem as well too. And after that semester, then I ended up going RTW, and then that's when I started my back on track progress as well too. I think that bot also opened my eyes because it helped me realize that failure is okay, and it's okay to take a step back and just, you know, reflect on all the mistakes you've made, and that they're all okay as well too. What I also really liked about bot is that we like select counselors and we choose who we want to speak with, and I thought that was quite nice because then I could always speak to my counselor, even if it was non-school related, just things that were bothering me, because I've never really experienced that before, because I was kind of I guess, shy or kind of a closed person. I didn't really want to share my emotions. But yeah, having that counselor, I was able to speak with them all the time, and that really helped a lot as well too. And then yeah, not taking a lot of courses all at once in bot really helped a lot, because then it helped me realize that, okay, if I take 1 or 2 courses and I form these new study strategies or new habits, that when I get used to it in one course, then I can apply the same thing to numerous courses all at once. So yeah, I started off, I think I took 1 course or 2 courses that were outside my major. It was just something different. I think I took like Spanish and econ, just something different, just to try something different. And I realized that, like, okay, yeah, like I can do this if I just stick with it and I form these new habits. And after that first semester, then I decided to try again in the summer, where I was going to step forward and just overcome that initial failure. I redid 1 course that I failed in my second semester at SFU. I just took the 1 single course, and just overcoming that 1 course that I did super poorly in previously, and turning that that F grade, fail grade, into a really good grade. It just helped me a lot, and it brought my confidence up moving forward. So I guess that's pretty much it from my journey to raising my GPA, but I can speak about my strategies that I use. So yeah, like mine were pretty similar to Shayna's, but I think I just had 3 listed here. I'll start with a different one that I had, and that's probably staying ahead. That one is definitely necessary, especially if you're in these more applied courses. So typically I'll just read the notes ahead of the lecture, even if you don't read them in full detail, but you just skim through them. At least you'll get a grasp, or you'll get to see what the topics are. And if you do have the time and you give it like a bit more emphasis, or you look into it in a bit more detail, then you can map out your thoughts and questions that you have, so that you can ask them in the lecture or after the lecture. I also think that after something is taught, then I'd complete them right after class would end, pretty much, if I had the time to, if I wasn't having a class right after. Because you can imagine being in like physics or math or any of these like kinematics, like some sort of applied course that they teach you all these really dense formulas and all these really heavy topics that if you look at it just once and then you don't review it again, and then you go back to it 3 days later, then it's not really there in your mind anymore, and things don't really make sense. So I noticed that if I just did it right after class right away, that it would help a lot. And then also just this whole strategy of staying ahead helps because moving forward, then when everyone's stressed out because they've got all these midterms and labs going on, then you're still keeping yourself calm because you've already covered all this material. So I think that staying ahead, especially in the beginning, the first 2 or 3 weeks of school, my friends and I, all we do is we just start working really, really hard so that we can get ahead. So yeah, that's my first strategy. My next strategy is making use of the university's support system. So we've got like office hours tutorials and workshops, and I think that these are definitely great resources to use. I actually met my closest friends in engineering at office hours and workshops, because it was the same group of guys that always used to attend office hours and workshops. So then eventually we just started talking, and yeah, Shayna was saying previously that if you surround yourself with like-minded individuals, then it sort of rubs off on you and you always want to stick to that as well too. So we would always meet up, say, hey, are you going to office hours after class? And I would say, yeah, I'll definitely be there. And even if you're ahead and you do know the material, it's still good just to be there, because then sometimes other students ask questions that you weren't necessarily thinking of in the beginning. Yeah, so that's my second strategy. And then yeah, the last one is definitely sleep. I used to live with the mindset of saying like sleep is for the weak, but I don't agree with that anymore. I think you should sleep 8 hours. I used to also sleep at I'm guilty of sleeping at 3 or 4 in the morning as well too. Typically now I try sleeping from like 9 to 10 o'clock, so that yeah, you can just, I find it's better to actually sleep early than wake up early, instead of sleeping late and like waking up late. It throws everything off, because I try to tell my own sister this as well too. Like if you sleep early then wake up early, most of the time that your exams are always in the morning, so then it sort of gets you into this routine as well too. And then also your memory retention's a whole lot better as well if you sleep on 8 hours. If you have 8 hours of sleep, if you try comparing like sleeping for 4 hours then trying to study for 3 or 4 hours versus 8 hours of sleep and then doing the same amount of studying, it's like two different worlds. It's completely different. And then yeah, I'll probably just turn off my devices in the evening as well too, maybe half an hour or so before I go to bed, just minimize distractions, because I know sometimes it's difficult to fall asleep, especially if your phone's buzzing all evening. So, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, TJ. Yeah, some really great points. And I think it's great that you can recognize some of the same themes, but different variations on them in what you said and what Shayna said, just to reinforce how useful these things are, like sleep, like finding areas of studies that are motivating, finding like-minded students that you can work with, and you're in very different disciplines, but those same things have helped both of you. I really like your point about office hours. And also, the idea that sometimes you will make faster progress by slowing down temporarily, as opposed to, powering through. Because, one thing where I see a lot of other students going wrong is trying to take on too many courses at once. And then if they're unsuccessful and, they don't get all the credits, then sometimes their response is to take even more, like I'm
Yeah.
behind, so I've got to take more classes, or I've got to do all my repeats all at once. And, I think you're a really good example that it made a big difference for you to repeat and do better in a class, but you had already changed yourself. Like you weren't just going to repeat it and do the same things. Plus you realized that given the level of difficulty of the class, you should take it by itself, and it can be hard for people to slow down, but sometimes you get a lot farther if you do.
Definitely. I think it's essential, instead of taking your previous mistakes or failures instead of one big chunk, if you just take it in sort of bite-sized pieces, it's definitely much more effective, I find.
Okay, well, it's great to see that you're doing so well in your field, and a very competitive and difficult field. Okay, so now let's hear from Noah.
All right. Give me a moment. I just need to work this out. Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Noah. I have a pretty unique academic journey. So it just helps if I just go through it. Okay, so I'm actually a returning mature student to SFU. So I re-entered via bot in 2019, and I just finished my new joint major at the end of 2022. I'm doing a joint major in both sociology and anthropology. So to set up the stage, I actually first entered SFU in 2007, which you will notice is a big difference from 2022. And I actually entered SFU after transferring from Douglas College. I transferred with a CGPA of about 3.81. And then a series of events occurred, and I was required to withdraw in 2009. At the time when I withdrew from SFU, they actually, at the very last time I was there, they actually started the pilot program of bots. So I think this is I don't even remember seeing Ruth. I do not know if you were there at the very beginning. But because I was part of that pilot program, but I had to leave due to special circumstances, my counselor at the time put on an exception that says that I could re-enter via bot at some future date if I wanted. And I actually forgot, by the way, I had this exception. I just assumed that I could not go back to SFU. So I went to work for a decade. And this is why I ended up re-entering SFU in 2019, where in 2018, I decided I did want to finish a degree. So I called up SFU, and the academic department said, oh, you have an exception written in. You can actually re-enter the college through bot, because there are other means you can do it to get out of RTW status. And I was like, wait, I am still eligible? That's so bizarre. But they said that the exception existed, so that's how I got it. So my CGPA, when I re-entered SFU, and again, there's a long story as to how this happened. My CGPA was 1.24, which is most probably lower than everybody else's in this room. You have to do special things to get 1.24. But when I when I finished my joint major in 2022, I now have a CGPA of 3.06, which is like the best B in my life ever. I'm not kidding. It's a very sweet B. But I was consistently getting over 4.0 term GPAs every term since I was returning to SFU. And currently, I am applying for a couple of grad programs at SFU, so you may actually see me back on campus this coming fall. I'm applying to both my department, sociology, anthropology, and communications as well. So that's my circumstances. If you have questions, because it's a very long story, you feel free to ask me afterwards. Now, when it comes to strategies, I'm a little bit of a different boat from both Shayna and TJ, because I came to SFU after having transferred from Douglas College. So for me, it wasn't a transition from a high school to a college setting that was an issue, because I was already experiencing in Douglas College, right? And I was doing well in Douglas College too. But it was more of, after I transferred to SFU, other things happened in my life that actually affected me quite severely, but I did not realize it at the time. I kind of compartmentalized it and said that I'm a strong enough student, these things don't matter, right? But eventually, unfortunately, there is a spillover effect. Without addressing these other areas of my life, it pulled me down as well. And then I chose, and because it was also a trap for myself, because I was a strong student previously. So I just thought, okay, I have the ability, I can just power through this crisis, right? So I actually did what Ruth described earlier, right? Where I decided to double down. I just said, you know what, just take more courses. Let's just increase the workload. This will work out eventually. And of course it doesn't, right? Because when you're actually like struggling and stressed about other parts of your life, it will affect how well you can study. So this actually leads into my first study strategy, not unsurprisingly. So my first study strategy, which I still follow to this day because it's so effective in helping me out. I do not know whether it applies to everybody, but I do think it's helpful for everybody in general. So the first one I would say is always pay attention to other parts of your life, right? Make sure you're not neglecting the other parts of your life, right? And this is more true, especially when you have exams, you have assignments due, right? It's much, much easier to keep throwing out those parts because you say, oh, I need to just do all my school stuff. So what this means is make sure that you're spending time with people that are close to you and important to you. Make sure you're setting aside time to relax, but not too much time. Schedule it, like make sure that you don't just schedule like 8 hours of Netflix. Don't do that. Say maybe 1 hour or 2 hours, like a much more controlled level of relaxation than what you normally do. And also make sure that you don't procrastinate. If once you hit that hour, you stop and then you carry on with your schoolwork. And of course, also pay attention to your hobbies and interests. Again, I think this is a thing that happens, especially when you're struggling with school. You tend to just drop everything. But you'll be surprised, like paying attention to these other aspects of your life will energize you, will keep you motivated in school, right? And I think we forget that sometimes because we are so desperate to do well or to pass in school. So that was my first strategy. Now, the second one is not really a strategy, but I think it's also an important thing that people should understand, right? So I didn't study education, but I did study sociology. And I did a bit of my own reading. You should know that the education system that we have set up currently, this whole middle school, high school, college pipeline that we've created, it doesn't work for everybody. It's not built for everybody. It's not built for all types of learners. It's not built for all types of students, right? And it's not just me saying this, it's actually the opinion of education experts out there, right? So unfortunately, if you've been going through like the normal pipeline and you're wondering why is school difficult, you're not the only one. And it's not your fault. It's because sometimes the system is not really that great to accommodate you as a student. So this leads to one of my other strategies, which is what worked the best for me was I wrote down here, studying myself, right? So this is actually one of the things that I really liked about the BOT program, because the BOT program does make you investigate yourself, learn your own study strategies, figure out what you like, right? So this is a part of learning about yourself as a student. So what I did afterwards, not only from BOT, but from just talking to other students or other good students as well, feel free to keep learning about all kinds of study strategies. But don't get locked down into the trap of saying, oh, I must copy that strategy exactly, right? Because when most people share their study strategies, they're sharing what works for them. But what works exactly for them may not work exactly for you. So always feel free to kind of like adapt it or adjust it according to what you know works best for you. I'm going to give an example soon. But the other one that's related to this is also think about other areas of your life where you do excel, right? And ask if there are transferable skills and techniques from there. So for example, because I had this like decade-long experience of working, right? I picked up some time management skills in my work life, but they were not fully transferable to study life, because work life, you have this 8-hour block, there's a very rigid schedule, there's a fixed lunchtime, but that's not really the life of a student. So I could not just transpose the entire strategy over. Instead, I say, okay, what worked there? How do I adjust it to a student life that's much more flexible hours, that is self-run rather than having managers hovering around you, right? And so I adjusted it, plus some tips I learned from BOT, because I think I wrote this to Ruth. I didn't really like the BOT time management schedule they made me do, but I did actually like how they made me think about the hours I had in a day. So I took that part of the strategy and say, I'll keep this works for me. And then I took stuff from my work and I said, I'll take some of these as well. And then I combined them together and mushed them together, and it worked out nicely. So feel free to take strategies and adjust it to your needs. Don't feel like, and because I think sometimes you end up trying to follow something to the letter and it doesn't work. And then you say, oh, I'm just not following hard enough. Don't do that trap. All right. Now I'm also I wrote down in my notes, I'm going to sound out what TJ said about using school resources. I will just add that consider joining a club as well. This is tying into the whole making sure your life is filled, because I think sometimes, again, some people may just treat the SFU as a school and they forget that there are all these other amenities available. So feel free to use the club, feel free to use the other facilities like the gym, the tennis court. You can use the running track whenever, by the way, in case you didn't know, you can just run the track whenever you want, as long as they're not being used. And I also want to sound out TJ's tip about staying ahead. Now, he was saying staying ahead of it, but I will also add staying on top of it is also normally sufficient as well, right? So if you don't feel comfortable that you want to be ahead of the material, just make sure you are keeping up with the schedule that the instructors listed out. It will really reduce your stress level because you actually commit a lot less of yourself to just staying on top of things rather than cramming everything into the last few days before your exams, and your stress level just smash through the roof. And I also want to sound out Shayna's tip about choosing a field you're passionate about. I think this is actually bigger than most people realize, because part of our education system has been giving us this notion that you should just study something that will give you a good career or a good job down the road, right? And then they kind of forget to tell you, oh, but by the way, you should be studying something you're passionate about. You'll be surprised that if you pick something that you actually care about, your motivation will just be way higher than it was when you were studying something you didn't care about. That will just happen. Like I think I was previously studying mathematics, which I'm still passionate about, by the way. But this field that I chose as well when I re-entered, I was also very passionate about it. So it really helps out. And then one of my own, the third unique strategy I had was, you should also be aware that most of your instructors actually want you to do well academically, right? And I understand that this can be a daunting aspect to education, because I do talk to people who don't like interacting with the instructors, but because instructors actually do want you to do well, if you do need extra time, extra assistance, extra materials, you can reach out to them. You'll be surprised. In my experience, just talking to a lot of professors and TAs, they've always been much more helpful than not, right? You may still run into some bad ones, but in my personal experience, I've encountered like 9 good ones for every one middling to not great one. So I think you should reach out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by your own success. I also have some tips about because I used to do math and I did well, but I forgot to write them down. I wasn't thinking about saying that. But yeah, that's my introduction.
Thanks so much, Noah. I think it's really interesting that all 3 of our panelists ended up changing from what they originally were studying. A couple of new things that Noah was talking about, although I think Shayna did allude to the whole self-awareness aspect. But what Noah was describing is, just sort of like learning new strategies, monitoring how it would work with you, becoming aware of what works for you, making adjustments. That process is called metacognition or self-regulated learning. And it is a very important step that a lot of people will skip. So they might learn that certain study strategies are effective and then they'll implement them, and that's great, but that's only going to take you part of the way, because maybe your study strategies are good for like 3 out of your 4 courses, but you're applying them to all 4. And if you took some time, stepped back, reflected, made adjustments, then you do better in that one course. So I do really think having a regular reflection time, like maybe every week, where you look at what you had planned to do that week, you look at what you actually accomplished. You don't beat yourself up, but you think about like, what went well? What should I repeat in my life? What should I build in more of? Maybe you're building more of going to the library, like Shayna was talking about, and what wasn't working for me. So like there was a study block, I was completely inefficient. What could I do differently next time? Yeah. So that was one thing. The other thing, I'm going to put the title of this thing in the chat box, because when Noah was talking about prioritizing a limited amount of what you enjoy doing, what helps you relax, that is exactly one of the strategies that was mentioned in this TED Talk that I would encourage you to look up. It's called What Do Top Students Do Differently? And it's by Douglas Barton. Did you see that TED Talk, Noah? I sometimes show it in bot.
I think I remember you showing me that one.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Douglas Barton did research in the UK and in Australia, and all his research had to do with like comparing the most successful students in the whatever population he was looking at, and looking at what they did versus what everybody else did. And he only found in his research two things that set them apart. And one of them was almost counterintuitively, it was relaxing, like really giving priority in your schedule for the things that relax and recharge you. So that was great. The other one that he mentioned was practice testing. So really trying to test your memory, trying to test your ability to apply the concepts you're learning when you're preparing for exams, as opposed to, just rereading or rewriting your notes or, something like that. And that is useful, like no matter if you're studying problem solving courses, which I think everybody knows it's useful for, but even for like any type of course, practice testing is the way to go. And there's like numerous research, not just this research described by Douglas Barton, about that being the way to go. So I think I have said enough. And I'm going to open the floor to questions. If anyone has any questions, if you want to unmute yourself and ask Noah or TJ, or you can put it in the chat, or you can private chat to me if you want to remain anonymous. This is your opportunity. And there are no bad questions. Wow, that's an amazing question, Priscilla. How do you overcome self-doubt? That one people might have to think about for a minute.
I'll try to address this one. I have a lot of experience with this. Now, so the bad news part is self-doubt never goes away, right? Like I would be lying if even in my very successful return, I definitely had self-doubt during my semesters, right? Even though I started to have all this empirical evidence that I'm a good student, you'll be surprised. It doesn't really seem to help. You still have self-doubt about your abilities. But one of the things I do like remind myself is to always remember what other people also consider about me. Like be careful of my own. It's very easy to like drown yourself in your own self-doubt. So I always make sure to sound out, engage with other people. Like if I really think I'm weak in something, I would test it out with one of my instructors or my classmates, say, hey, do I really have it bad? Like, do I not understand this thing? And sometimes you just be surprised, right? You'll be like, no, you actually got a pretty good grasp of it, or you are actually more on top of things than you think you are, right? So I think the problem with self-doubt really becomes like a cycle, is when you are not keeping up with schoolwork, when you are performing poorly in your homework, in your exams and all that, right? So in those instances, I would definitely recommend a more like a direct approach to dealing with the self-doubt. So I didn't mention this in my introduction, right? But I did use the services of a counselor before to help with because I mentioned I was struggling in these other parts of my life, right? So I did engage a counselor to help me with those parts of my life because I just wasn't aware of how to deal with them. So I'm not saying you should immediately jump to counselor, but you may want to consider more direct strategies that if you really feel like helpless about what you can do, reach out to other people, right? Like don't I think that the real danger is isolating yourself, and then that's when you really box your options up.
Okay, I don't want to jump ahead to the next question because I want to give TJ some time in case he wants to add anything. But I noticed that the next question is, what do you do to keep yourself focused on your studies when you want to escape from them? And, and since you mentioned not isolating yourself and talking to a counselor, and I think this question also kind of harkens back to what Shayna was talking about her earlier pattern as well, about avoidance and isolation. And I just want to reiterate that for both of these questions, self-doubts, wanting to escape, actually opening up to somebody, whether it's a professional somebody or just, somebody in your life that you trust, and not being so isolated in these overwhelming thoughts can be a really valuable first step. Okay, TJ, do you have anything that you want to comment on either or both of these questions?
Yeah, maybe I could add a bit for self-doubt. So I think I actually did worse than Noah. Noah's saying he had like a 1.25. I had like a 1.05 actually. But then like now I'm at almost a 3.6, I think, in MSc. So that self-doubt also, yeah, it just never goes away from me, just because whenever I reflect on it, whenever I sit there, it's like no one's a perfect person. I also mess up tests all the time and quizzes all the time. So moving forward in courses, that always happens to me. I'll just think back, I'll be like, well, I wrote a quiz on something like this in September and now it's on the final exam in December. And you just sit there and you think, oh, like, is it going to be a repeat of the exact same thing that I did like 3-4 months ago? But I realized that whenever you do have those feelings of self-doubt, sometimes it's more so a challenge to yourself, I would say. When I do have those feelings that like, oh, I feel like I'm not properly prepared or whatnot, yeah, just testing yourself and trusting yourself is definitely the things that I do for sure. And I always ask my friends as well too, like, hey, can you see, do I totally get this? Do you want to work together on this? Because yeah, I think that you shouldn't have to burden everything on yourself. Just as Ruth was saying, like you should go out and seek some support. Because yeah, sometimes a lot of things are just too much to take on by yourself. And there's definitely people out there who are wanting to give you a hand. So yeah, I think that's my response for this one.
Thank you so much, TJ. Yeah, I'm going to just tackle the self-doubt question myself because I certainly have had self-doubt. It seems to be a universal experience. And then don't worry, we'll come back to the other question as well. Actually, maybe I'll address it next, who knows. But for self-doubt, there are a couple of things. Like one, let's get back to the idea of seeing a counselor. One of the things the counselors will do, some counselors, depending on their theoretical framework, they'll do some cognitive therapy where they'll, encourage you to challenge some of the doubtful thoughts that you have about yourself, and ask, is there any other way to like reframe it? Is there any evidence for it? I think the panelists talked a bit about that in terms of getting a reality check from their professors, TAs, classmates. But I mean, another way to do it is to, just think like if you catch yourself, like sometimes these thoughts are automatic and you don't really notice that you're thinking these things. You just notice like what Shane is talking about, an anxiety attack or something. But if you can catch yourself thinking like, I'm going to fail this test or something like that, then you can back up and say, wait a minute, have I ever said that before about a test? And how many tests have I really failed? I mean, was there a time when I said I was going to fail a test, and I ended up continuing to prepare, and I didn't fail, and I did well. So that's kind of an example. The other thing about self-doubt is there are different approaches to, if you say you have a big task with like a lot of doubts, and you have some small tasks that, you're pretty confident about, a lot of people would say, like, do the big task first. But, if you are, say, in the position where, oh my God, I want to run away for this big task, I have no confidence, you could maybe start off slowly with like one of the small tasks and be successful at that, and use that as motivation and inspiration to keep on going, because like just sort of getting your mood up by completing something can be helpful. The other thing is breaking down a large, overwhelming tasks really fine. There was a procrastination expert that I heard on the radio, and he said that he hates writing letters of reference. And he breaks it down as fine as, I'm going to reread the student's request. Then I'm going to open my stationery on my computer, So like nothing is really too small. Like if you can do a little bit of it, even a 5-minute piece or something, that can kind of get you going sometimes. And then for the focus, the question about keeping focused when you want to escape. One of the things that I might do is, and also like for any of these things, not just seeking help from counseling, but maybe you're really dreading something because it's huge, right? And you feel like you don't have the resources to do it. Like I did not understand that unit of the course. How can I possibly do a project on it? So not just seeking help from counselors, but seeking help from TAs, seeking help from classmates. If the area is just motivation, like maybe the course is not something you're interested in, but you are a social person, so maybe having a study partner will get you motivated to work on it, whether or not it's a study partner for your class. And if you're taking a series of classes that you don't like, then maybe you want to think about changing your major. But even if you're in a major you love, you might have a class you don't like. So you have to look at like, how can I increase my motivation? And maybe it's just like a lot of rewards, like every time I work on this class, I plan for something fun in the evening, or it could be that you find somebody that you like to work with you. Okay, so Noah, do you want to circle back to what you do to keep yourself focused on your studies when you want to escape? Is there anything else? And then we'll get to Charlene's question.
So how to keep yourself focused on your studies when you want to escape from them? So one of the things I personally found very useful, and this actually works really well with Ruth's previous tip about getting a study partner, right? If you engage and you form a study relationship with one of your classmates, this will help keep you accountable, because they will be the ones who are saying, oh, we have this thing that's coming up to you. Have you prepared for it? Or have you read this chapter that we have to read for next week, right? You'll be surprised. That can go a long way, right? Because when you are being accountable to other people, you will start to think to yourself, okay, I have to get through this. Even if it's not really the most fun thing, even if it's kind of dreary or not exciting. So having other people help to hold you accountable, I find personally be quite helpful to keeping me focused. But I should also sound out things like what TJ mentioned, right? You should also try to minimize things that will try to pull your focus away. Your phone, TV. For me, a comfortable bed, I have to really put those far away, right? Things that that you have already learned from your own life that will distract you, put them away from you, right? I find that also helps a lot of helping me to keep me focused. Now, if the class is online, oh my goodness, yes, exactly. And you are using a computer and the internet is just waiting for you and all your attention and your key searches, right? Don't do it. here's some extreme things you can do, but if it helps, it helps. You could delete all your browsers, seriously, like, or at least make sure that, or you limit yourself to only using one window and never open another window. This will keep you focused on your task, right? So that's the catch, right? Because a lot of stuff is now online. There is a lot of distractions from there. So I would, similar to what TJ was saying, just try to limit yourself, find ways to winnow down all these outside distractions. I do want to touch on Charlene's question, the first one, which is how do you push through courses that are not interesting, but are not needed for course requirements? This one I won't actually talk about myself, but I'll rather talk about, because I was talking to my classmates. So in sociology and anthropology majors, there are 2 required classes which are statistics based. And if you know people in social sciences, they did social sciences to avoid math. So a lot of my classmates actually struggled, right? These were required courses for the major, but they were specifically things that they did not like, right? So I talked to them. I was like, how do you get through these? For me, I didn't really have the issue because I had a background in math, but I was curious, right? And a lot of them, I mean, some of the tips already mentioned, like study partners, but I think one of the things that really helps out if it's not interesting is you could kind of, what was it that somebody recommended? Okay, this is a little bit, I do not know how applicable this is, I'm going to be honest, but they did talk about how they use the materials to try to connect it to something that they liked. So for example, since we were doing statistical analysis about social phenomena, right, they focus more on saying, okay, I don't like the stats part, but I do like the results part. I do like seeing what I can get out of using these statistical methods, right? So they instead of focusing on the parts that bored them or made it undesirable, right? They focus more on the parts that they thought, okay, I do like these parts. I do think there are positive, I can make connections there that are interesting, right? And also feel free to, if your instructor is teaching in a way that you find to be dry or boring, feel free to either look online for resources that may teach it to you in a more engaging way. Or one of the things I did do is, for me personally, I've tapped a TA. Like there was a class where the professor it's difficult to understand and was kind of dry, and I engaged more the TA, who did a much better job of presenting the material and keeping me engaged with it as well. So that's another tip I would recommend. Just like try to use a different vector to learn from as well. Like don't just say, oh, the prof is the one, I must follow the prof. Look for other avenues if it's really a difficult instructor that you're dealing with, or difficult materials.
Okay, I'm going to address Charlene's question about the best places to get tutors for certain courses you're struggling with. And feel free, either of you to jump in if you have any ideas, or even other participants if you've gotten a good tutor before. So yeah, it depends what disciplines you're in, because some of the disciplines now have their own peer tutoring programs, where the students are selected by professors that have taught them when they were taking the class before. So a lot of the sciences, math, computing, they have peer tutors that are connected to certain courses, and they have regular hours. If it's not something like that, you can still talk to a professor or, the departmental secretary or somebody, and say, hey, sometimes they keep a list of students who want to tutor, or graduate students who are looking for extra income. If they don't have a list, you can say, are there any students that you taught like last term who did really well? Could you ask them if they'd be willing to tutor me? There's just, and it is for more math based. Yeah. So if it's in I don't know if it's in the Department of Math, like there's math based everywhere. So if it's in the Department of Math, you are likely to have access to that peer tutoring program. So just like Google SFU math peer tutors or something. But if not, then you might want to be asking the professor, you might want to ask your TA if they know of other graduate students that would be interested. But just a general thing to keep in mind when you're looking for tutors, especially, well, I mean, like there's the whole academic integrity issue. And there's a lot of tutors who, so-called tutors who are not very ethical, and they just, basically want to be paid to do the work for you. So, that's kind of clear if you start getting that sense, to avoid that. But in math or any quantitative problem solving courses, and I think, TJ and Noah have both taken those kinds of courses, and you can tell me if what I'm saying is true, but it's something you have to do yourself. Like you do not learn math by watching somebody solve problems. Like that's why you can't just like look up how to solve a problem in the Khan Academy or YouTube video and be able to do it yourself always. But a lot of people who tutor math think that's the way to teach a student. Watch me solve this problem. Now you know. So what you want to look for in a tutor is somebody who will, sort of be with you while you try to solve the problem. And this is the beauty of the workshops they run in the math department and the stats department that you can go to. You'll just be there, you'll be solving the problem. If you hit a roadblock, then you ask the tutor, can I have a hint? It's not like, can you do it from here on in? No, it's, can I have a hint? You get the hint, then you struggle a while with the problem some more, knowing the hint, and you might at that point be able to get through it. And if not, you can ask for another hint, and you just want to learn the process of solving the problem yourself, rather than watching the TA solve the problem, because you're going to have to solve the problem yourself on tests. The other thing is, it's so important to get comfortable with solving problems that you find difficult, because if you just skip over the difficult problems and solve all the ones that you can do without too much of a problem, then you get into the test, you encounter a difficult problem, and you experience that intense discomfort and anxiety for the first time. And that can lead to, just kind of panic on the exam. Whereas if you've gotten comfortable with like struggling through problems on your own, when it's a low stakes homework kind of situation, you'll be a lot better off in a high stakes situation. Yeah, so any other comments from the panelists on any of these questions, or any other questions that people have? I've probably talked more than I should, since it's a pure panel thing.
I probably, touching on that response, Ruth, about math-based courses, I definitely agree with that statement. Something with math-based courses is you just have to be comfortable with the feeling of being uncomfortable, for sure. So I always did the exact same thing, and when it was low stakes, things that just weren't worth very many marks, or if you finished all the homework already, I'd take the book with me. I used to have the actual physical copy of the books just because I preferred it that way, and I'd take it to the workshop, because the workshop, they're not just there to help you just do the assignments, but they'll give you general guidance on anything basically in the course. So you can just pull up any random problems from the book or whatnot, or you can even ask them if they have any suggestions, and basically they'll help you do it. But it's not like, okay, watch me solve it. No, they actually want you to do it, and for you to feel uncomfortable, they'll just point you in the right direction, but they won't give you the actual answer. They'll always try to get that process in you, because that's super important. I still do it to this day. I used to have one TA who used to tell me to write down the steps when I was solving. I was taking calculus 2 at the time. So to this day now, whenever I do my courses and I'm solving problems on an exam, I always write down the steps. So I'll be like, step 1, do this, and then I'll do the work. Step 2, do this, just because it helps me collect my thoughts and to see, like, okay, if I just follow the steps that I'm always used to following, then I should be able to solve it.
Good advice. Yeah, and if the class doesn't have a workshop, before you spend your hard-earned money to hire a TA, I know students, actually, it's the manager of the Student Learning Commons was telling me about when her son was at SFU, and he ended up graduating from statistics and actuarial science with very high marks. What he would do is he would sit outside the professor's office during office hours and do his homework there, so that if he ever hit a roadblock, he could just pop right in at the office hours and get it. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions, or, want us to say more about a question you already asked?
I think there was just one question here regarding online class.
Oh, that's
Uh,
right, yeah.
yeah.
I would like to get more information for that one. Is it like an asynchronous online class where you have to do work at your own pace? Or is it like a Zoom class like this? Oh, it's a self-paced class. Okay, have either of you had any of those?
Yes, and yeah, I really didn't enjoy it. Because the lecture's just there at your hands, and it's pretty much, oh, watch it by this day, or watch it during this day. So I always thought those ones weren't for me. My friends enjoyed them, but I didn't really enjoy them because I'm used to I'm kind of a systemic kind of person, and I like everything on a schedule because it helps me organize my thoughts. So yeah, I took one course that had lectures like that, and I think how I would stay focused is that the times that the class is actually supposed to be at, then I would watch the lectures during those times so that it would make me feel like I'm there. And then when I did have questions, then I would just write them all down, because the prof always held office hours, like I think 2 or 3 times a week. So then I would collect all my questions. I'd ask my friends as well too first, because sometimes, like, let's say it's Monday, and your friends would write, your friends have watched already and your office hours are on Wednesday, then you can just go to your friends first. Let me read. I see.
Noah, do you have anything to throw in on that? Or anything?
Yeah, this is normally a difficult one, because it's like I already mentioned about how the education system isn't perfect for everybody, and this is just like making things even worse because it puts additional obstacles in front of you. I did remember taking one of these classes where I didn't even have, I mean, there was a prof assigned, but there was no office hours for the professor. Like, there's literally no way to engage with the professor. And the TA was somebody that you could only email infrequently. So it was super hands-off, right? It was very much self-driven. And that was a difficult class for a lot of the students as well, I think, because it's just, I think that one of the biggest questions comes to mind is like, how do you keep yourself motivated, right? Like, there isn't a place to go to, materials are just sitting out there on the online world waiting for you to access them. I don't think there was even quizzes to like keep us on a time, on the schedule. The only thing we had was like 2 midterms. So it's either you were prepared for the midterm or you were not, and then that'll be terrible for you. So in that instance, I did something similar to TJ, so right, where I just pretended that, okay, it's asynchronous, but I just pretend like 2 hours on Tuesday is going to be the lecture time for that class, right? Then I make sure I finish the materials on Tuesday itself, even though there isn't a class. Because you will end up having to create your own schedule, is what I found I had to do. I had to make my own hours. I had to like write up a kind of like a mock syllabus for myself, because the only 2 due dates we had were midterm and finals, and you had to read this much stuff before the midterm and then study this much stuff before the finals. So it does unfortunately put more work on you as the student, because you will have to prepare yourself and kind of do half the work of the instructor on your own. And there is no easy way out, unfortunately. I think this is one of the really negative student outcomes for the pandemic, because you will run into these classes more frequently than I think you would if the class was still in person. Oh, and they don't answer. Yeah, and one more other thing, if this TA doesn't, oh, this is tricky. I was about to say you could try reaching out to another TA if you happen to know one that knows what you're doing, but that's hard as well, right? Because they may not specifically have some expertise in that subject field. I'll think about this question. Maybe I have a solution.
Yeah, I think Noah's exactly right. It's very unstructured, and you need to create structure for yourself, both in terms of setting the time frames in which you'll do the work. I think the other thing, we've already talked about study partners, study groups, but, in a class like that, I think it's all the more important. There's probably, and probably people would be more eager to join a study group with you or partner with you than in a typical class. Because if you're feeling the lack of connection and the lack of opportunities for social learning and that kind of thing, probably a lot of people are really missing it too, and probably there's some sort of discussion forum or something on the platform where you can just say, hey, does anyone want to have, even a virtual study group over Zoom, or a physical study group, and just go through this garbagey stuff together, or does anyone at least want to meet up and break up the course into chunks and check in with each other regularly as to whether we've finished that week's chunk? Yeah.
Actually, a couple of ideas just came to my mind about that question. So I'm just going to build up on what Priscilla was talking about, or what Ruth is mentioning. So you have to create structure. So one thing that I did do quite for a number of my classes was that we always created like a Discord server where the students could like engage with one another, even if there's no TA, even if there's no prof. So feel free to float that idea, right? Especially I think in these age classes, you are normally allowed to post in the discussion part on Canvas. You're not going to get everybody joined, but as long as you have like 4 to 5 that agree to, you will have other people to engage with, even if the professors are not there. And then if, as you said, if the TA doesn't seem to be answering a question, ask a peer. You'll be surprised. I generally found really good results from talking to peers. And the second thing about adding structure was I also remember that this is from the SLC. The SLC, if I remember correctly, they host a study hall. You can use that, right? Use the study hall time and schedule it for the class and say, yeah, you know what, the class doesn't have an actual time. I'll just use the SLC study hall time to pretend that there is a class. And then you'll be alone.
Unfortunately, the last couple of terms, we haven't had the personnel to hold that, but I hope that at some point in the future we do. But I have seen certain clubs and departments and stuff having their own study halls. Like there was a woman in science study hall I saw posters about. There was the African Caribbean Students Association has one. The Disability Network, I think it's what's it called, DNA, Disability and Neurodiversity Alliance, has a study hall. Although I think both of those last groups, it's not every week. I think it starts later in the term in the lead up to exams. But yeah, you might be able to find something about some other groups holding a study hall, but ours were dependent on volunteers kind of moderating it, and we did not get the volunteers, and I'm very sorry about that. Okay, so are there any final questions, or do TJ or Noah have any final remarks they would like to make? I'll give you a few minutes because I know, sometimes it takes time for people to put their questions together, and I don't want to end this prematurely, but yeah, but if you have, I'm thinking about calling this to an end if there's nothing further. So if you have something further, then please let us know. Well, I think that's it then. A big thank you to TJ and Noah. A big thank you to Priscilla, not Priscilla. Well, thank you, Priscilla and Charlene and Yu Yang for asking your questions and for sticking it out till the end. But of course, I meant Shayna in her absence. A big thank you to her. I think, even though we didn't have very many attendees, I think it helped us engage in a discussion that was more tailored to the attendees' needs, and I really appreciate that. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
Mm.
Thank you for setting it up, Ruth. And it was nice to meet everybody.
Yeah. I hope we can do this again sometime, and I'm thrilled to see the two of you both very successful.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.